In today's video, we're going to be talking about Sonos and how they did in 2024 and potentially what they're going to be doing in the year of 2025. So 2024 has been a huge year for Sonos, especially with the release of the Sonos Arc Ultra, the premium flagship soundbar Atmos capable from Sonos. But we will go through everything that they have released from the January of 2024, from very obscure products right up to the flagship product of the Arc Ultra. So in sequence of order, we have the Sonos and Sonos 8-inch ceiling speakers, and which nobody really cares about, because if you already have 6-inch speakers, then you won't probably cut another bigger hole to mount those. And we also have the Botch app update, which Sonos launched on the 7th of May to a lot of negative comments. We also have the Sonos Ace headphones, which came as a new product category for Sonos, providing mobile Sonos listening experience. And another Sonos product, which is also portable, is the Sonos Roam 2, which you may or may not have heard about. And we also have the Arc Ultra and the Sub 4, which will launch at about the same time, right? And finally, we have an announcement, which is for the Era 100 Pro. It's a commercial edition which doesn't require a power socket. Technically, it's going to be released in January, made available from January of 2025, so not sure if it qualifies as a 24 update. But anyway, this is a summary of all the products and things that Sonos has done in 2024. And at the end of the video, we'll talk about what they're potentially going to do in 2025. Now, before we go on, that is the summary of what I have. Now, if you have some time, stay around. I'll go through all these products in order, right? So first, the Sonos 8-inch ceiling speakers. Okay, so it has bigger drivers. Now, 8-inch drivers are big. 6.5-inch already delivers quite a bit of bass, but 8-inch, they are big. And I like ceiling speakers because regardless of where you are standing in the room, it is kind of equal distance. So if you have the need to stream audio and sound, music, background especially, throughout the house, then these will be the ones to get. But you do need a Sonos M or some other M to drive those speakers. And the problem is that you cannot really use those speakers as Atmos speakers. They can be used as surround speakers, but then your surround sound will be playing from the top and not your side or the rear. So is it an important product that Sonos launched? Not really. I don't think a lot of people have heard about it. And in fact, they quietly launched this, much like how they will launch the Era 100 Pro, but more about that later. Now, something that is very, very critical and concerns a lot of Sonos users, and including the new users, is the app update. So this was a huge problem for Sonos in 2024. The recovery, half a year later, they're still trying to recover. I would say that now the app is potentially better, but it didn't start off that way, right? There was a lot of issues with the product. The alarms were missing, the playlist sorting, the whole app itself was badly rolled out. It was not ready. And it feels that Sonos did roll out their app because of the need to accommodate the Sonos Ace, which is, I'm going to be talking about the headphones in just a little bit. But, well, the products with Wi-Fi 6 enabled, Bluetooth low energy, they are all much easier to connect now. And for the first time in years, I would say that the new Sonos S2 app, the one that is currently in the store right now, it actually updates my products smoothly, and one try is all it takes, and all the updates are pushed to all the products. I never had that for years. So if you ask me whether the app is in a better place now, yes, it is in a better place than it was in May of 2024. Efforts are still ongoing. I think Nick Millington, the Chief Innovation Officer, he has committed to improving the app. And I would say that the app does feel a little bit smoother right now. Again, they're still playing around with TruePlay, and I hope that they don't change TruePlay to the point that it breaks TruePlay. I think this was the debacle about 2 years back. So it seems that every once in a while, Sonos will come up with something funky and it breaks a lot of things. But Sonos, I hope you've learned a lesson here and you will continually try to update. Don't shy away from updating products, updating the software, including the app, but put it through more rigorous testing. A good suggestion that has been going around is that you can offer 2 versions of the software. People who want a very simple, no frills version, and people who want to play around with it, and you can enable more pro functionalities like a multi-band EQ for those, and well, whatever, right? But Sonos, they kind of did mess up that app release. Now it is okay, and I'm happy to report that we are ending off the year of 2024 with a almost fully functional S2 app, one that is basically updating all my products at one go without retries. And of course, Sonos entered a new product category, which is the Sonos Ace headphone. Now, the Sonos Ace headphone, I wanted to love it, and I actually did like it a lot, right? The ANC, the active noise cancelling, is one of the best that is available in any headphones, including the ones from the Apple headphones. They're just ridiculous. But the Sonos Ace headphones, they are really, really nice, really comfortable, made with premium materials. The fit is just perfect. A lot of things. I've done extensive video on the Sonos Ace headphones before. You can check those videos out right up here, and you can make a decision for yourself. But one thing is that, you know, since the launch of the Sonos Ace headphones, there has been 21 updates to the Sonos software, right? But one thing that's missing is True Cinema. So True Cinema was marketed at first. It wasn't available at launch. And you know what? Today is the 28th of December and it is still not available. 21 updates later, it was promised at the end of the year, but nothing heard from them so far. So I just updated the Sonos Ace firmware to check. And as of today, 3.1.5 version, there's still no True Cinema. So what does True Cinema do? True Cinema basically tunes the sound to how you would hear the Sonos soundbar, whatever you're using, would be it the Ray or the Beam or the Sonos Arc Ultra, to mimic how those soundbars will feel and sound like in your headphones. So the moment you put on the headphones, it feels as though you are in the same room and you're not wearing the headphones. So I'm probably one of the very few people who have tried this feature at launch, at the media launch. I must say that it sounded quite amazing. I don't know what is holding Sonos back from launching this, but you know, that feature was promised. It is now missing. Marketing references have been removed to True Cinema. Well, but the other function that works well is the sound swap. So sound swap, it allows the sound with a tap of a button, right, to transfer from your Sonos Arc Beam or the Sonos Ray, even the Arc Ultra, of course, to the headphones, and one more tap and it will go back to your soundbar. So that is a convenience, is a quality of life feature, and it works fine, right? As a pair of headphones, as a pair of Bluetooth headphones, these Sonos Ace, they work pretty well and they sound really, really good. So there's a lot of potential to the Sonos Ace headphones, which is probably unrealized at the same time. I would say that they are trying to work on the S2 app. They are trying to work on releasing the Arc Ultra, the Sub 4, and a bit more about that in just a little bit. But there's a lot of potential to these, and they are not cheap. They have been discounted, but they're still not cheap, right? So I would say, so Sonos, I do think that you need to pay some attention and show some love to the Sonos Ace headphones. I know they're not selling as well as you would hope them to be, but you know, it's still early in the game for you in the personal audio headphone space. And the next product that they kind of quietly released was the Sonos Roam 2. So the Sonos Roam 2 is a portable speaker. It basically is the same as the Sonos Roam 1. It's just an addition of a Bluetooth button. So the Sonos Roam 2 allows you to use the Sonos Roam 2 as a Bluetooth speaker without downloading the Sonos app. So it basically works like a Bluetooth speaker. Beyond that, not much else. I've done videos on the Sonos Roam before, and the only difference, because the sound is the same, the only difference will actually be that Bluetooth button. Then the very, very big product launches, which I think Sonos kind of saved themselves from 2024, is the Sonos Arc Ultra. So Sonos Arc Ultra, it incorporated something called the Sound Motion Driver, and the Sound Motion Driver is something, it incorporates a force cancelling dual micro sub into their entire Sonos Arc Ultra soundbar. So this fits into the soundbar and it produces a lot of bass. I think potentially too much bass, in fact. And if you check out my reviews and the extensive coverage I've done on the Sonos Arc right here, you will know that the Sonos Arc Ultra may potentially have too much bass. Talking about bass, there is also the Sub 4. So the Sub 4 was launched, and it looks exactly the same as a Sub 3, as a Sub 2, as a Sub 1, right? Except that it has new finishing. It is now matte black or matte white. So the finishing is probably similar to what you'll find on the Era speakers, you will find on the Arc or the Arc Ultra or the Beam, right? That matte finishing rather than the glossy finish that Sonos Sub has been using since day one. Well, with the exception of a version of the Sub 1 which had a matte finishing, but otherwise, now the whole matte finishing looks a lot more seamless with your whole home theater setup. It is also lighter, not that it makes a big difference, but in terms of saving the world, now shipping is cheaper and as well as costing less of a carbon footprint to the environment. Now it also has a faster processor and a huge memory store. This is probably important because you do want, I mean, not that it's going to sound faster. The Sub is still going to sound relatively similar and familiar to you if you have owned a Sub before. But I would say that it does open up functionalities for the Sub 4 for potential future updates. Now, the other thing is also connectivity. It is now Wi-Fi 6 and it is also BLE, Bluetooth Low Energy compatible. So a lot of small incremental minor updates which you may not appreciate, but the Sub 4 is primed for many years of use down the road. And lastly, to round off the year, they kind of like mentioned that they will launch the Era 100 Pro. So what is the Era 100 Pro? The Era 100 is basically a replacement to the Sonos One or the Play One from many years before. But the Era 100 Pro requires no power. Well, it requires power, but it just doesn't require a power socket. So the Era 100 Pro actually has PoE Plus, which is power over Ethernet Plus, right? And PoE Plus can supply up to 30 watts of power. So the whole Era 100 speaker can just be powered via your Ethernet port. I mean, of course, you need a PoE Plus injector or a PoE Plus router somewhere in the mix. I would say that most people won't use it. It is more for commercial kind of installation where it is hard to run power. So for commercial installation, imagine if you wanted the Sonos Era speakers in your whole setup, you don't have to run two lines, right? You don't have to run an Ethernet and you don't have to run a power line. And Ethernet is probably a lot easier to run than a power line. So that should round up what Sonos has done for 2024. Now, it is interesting because there are quite a bit of things that they were supposed, that we thought that they were launched, but they didn't launch. And we'll talk about those and what can potentially be launched in 2025. Now, Sonos has committed to launching 2 new products every year. They have outdone themselves. They've definitely done more than 2 products, right? Including very obscure products like the IKEA Symphonics floor lamp, which is basically the IKEA Symphonics lamp, which I have somewhere behind me, except that it comes with legs and now it stands on stands. But 2025, right? So there are a few things that I think they may launch. We don't know yet. All this is speculation right now at this point. Well, technically the Era 100 Pro, right? Because it's going to be delivered only in January of 2025, but you won't care about it. I don't really care about it. Nobody cares about it. It's like the Sonos 8-inch drivers, which they launched in January of 24. Nobody really cares about it. The next one that is potentially big is the Era 500. So if you look at the entire lineup of what Sonos has, there's one product, or maybe 2, right? But one product stands out, which is the Sonos 5. The Sonos 5, they are great speakers for music. Really good. And I'm still keeping a pair of them around. I don't use them as much now because I don't listen exclusively to music on those now. But they are great music speakers, right? And if you are out for a stereo setup, a pair of Sonos 5s will be your best bet. You don't even need a subwoofer with it. So we have the Era 100 and the Era 300, which were launched last year. And what is sorely missing is the Era 500 because the 100 replaced the Sonos One. The 300 kind of sat somewhere where the Play 3s would have been, but there wasn't a Sonos 3, right? So there was only a Sonos 1 and a Sonos 5. The gap on the Sonos 3 was missing. Era 300 came in, but the 300 is a lot more capable because it had upward firing speakers and most people are using those for surround channels in their Sonos Arc setup, right, which actually lends physical upward firing drivers to your setup. Now, Era 500, what can they potentially do with it? I don't know. Maybe they can actually fit a sound motion driver in it. Let me see the size. Oh, well, actually this is kind of big, but in an Era 500, which can potentially be the size of a Sonos 5, this actually can go in quite well. So I don't know. I mean, of course, it's not going to be in the same exact form factor. They may re-engineer it a little bit, but I would say that it is wise for them to think about launching an Era 500, but the pricing is then going to be stupendously high. But it has to be engineered as a music speaker, because nobody's going to spend that kind of money, especially in a pair, which will potentially cost more than the Arc Ultra itself. To use them as surround speakers just doesn't really make sense. So make a pair of kick-ass Era 500 speakers for music, and I think Sonos, you have another winner on your hand. So the other thing is the Beam. So the Beam Gen 2 was launched a couple of years ago, and we haven't seen a Beam Gen 3 yet. Maybe they'll call it the Beam Ultra, I don't know, right, to incorporate the sound motion driver. 2025 seems to be a big year for sound motion. The only product that has the sound motion right now is actually the Sonos Arc Ultra. So I would say that they might incorporate it in a few more products, which will move me to the next speculation, which is the Sub Micro, right? So we have the Sub Mini and we have the Sub, right, which is the big one and the small one right now. But Sub Micro can be potentially smaller than a Sub Mini, or you have a Sub Max or Sub Ultra, which incorporates the sound motion technology. I mean, I don't know. This is just my imagination running a little bit wild. I'm just thinking that Sonos might need 3 subwoofer offerings instead of 2, or maybe even 4 with a Micro and a Max. This is ridiculous. I don't think they're gonna do this, but if they do, a Sub Micro with sound motion, something that can potentially sit on your console or your tabletop for your gaming setup, I think it is potentially something that I want to try to see whether there's a market for it. But again, I think it's too big of a gamble. Probably something that Sonos won't do in the near future. Now, the next thing will be the TV streamer. Now, Sonos has been talking about TV streaming, TV services for a very long time, and there is some speculation and some work afoot, especially when it comes to partnership on Sonos delivering the Sonos streamer. Is probably a competitor to the Nvidia Shield or the Apple TV as we speak, but they don't have a proper software ecosystem. We don't know whether it's going to be Android based. We don't know whether it's going to be their own OS. I really don't know about it. But the TV streamer can potentially be the piece that sits between your Sonos products and your TV, right? So the TV signals, the visual signals, video signals will go to the TV, and it will then cast the audio signals to your other sound products. Now, with that in mind, I would think, I really don't know much about this. The potential is high and the possibilities are quite endless. I'll cover more about it when I hear more about it in the future, in the coming year. But the last product I want to end off with will be the Sonos AVM. Now, I've been talking about the Sonos AVM since 2020, so that's 4 years ago, and come next year, it'll be half a decade of me talking about the Sonos AVM. So what is the Sonos AVM? Don't get me wrong, I'm not hinting anything, and it is not a product that I've heard about, but I think that a Sonos AVM is probably a very good extension to the TV streamer, or in fact, you can think of it as a replacement for the Sonos Amp. So the Sonos Amp today, it takes a HDMI ARC input and it casts out stereo. You can connect your own speakers to it and it casts out stereo. So what I want the Sonos AVM to do is to act as the AV processor, right? So it takes an eARC signal, it takes an ARC signal, and it will then cast out the sound to any soundbar and any Sonos speakers you have in your setup. So if you think about what Devile has done, right, they have some kind of like a control box as well, which will control 5, 7, 9 Phantom speakers. But those Phantom speakers are really, really expensive, right? But just think about what Sonos can do with the AVM. use the AVM as a center console, and you can then fit in your Era 100, 300, 500 soundbars, whatever you have, and direct the correct channels to those. And you don't even need a soundbar, right? You can have, for example, 5 Era 300 scattered on the left, center, and right, and 2 more on the rear to act as surround, and you still have your upward firing. So the Sonos M, given that kind of functionality and power, it probably won't come cheap, but it doesn't require amplification, right? They can even strip out the amplifier within the TV, within the AVM, right? Maybe you just call it the Sonos AV processor. Many years ago, I covered that in one of the top 10 wish lists. I think it is still relevant. My dream is still alive there. But you can be sure that in the coming year of 2025, if anything comes out from Sonos, I'll be covering it. So if you're not yet subscribed, do subscribe to the channel. Meanwhile, check out any of the videos that I have posted up here related to the Sonos products. All right, so that's a 2024 year for Sonos. We hope to see more exciting things from Sonos in 2025. And here is to a good year ahead. And I'll see you in the next video next year.